Welcome everyone, this is the third and final informational video of our first series on this channel, The War on Fiber. If you didn't catch the first two videos, which I'm sure most of you did not, in the first video I talked about soluble fiber and I went through two main claims for how soluble fiber can be used to prevent cardiovascular disease and prevent diabetes. I talked about why those claims may not be totally true based on confounding variables in different contexts. And they gave two counterclaims about how it can actually be conducive to malnourishment and actually worsen digestive symptoms in certain contexts and for certain people. In the second video, I talked about insoluble fiber and its role in preventing colon cancer and in alleviating symptoms of constipation. I also gave some recommendations for how to avoid carcinogens in food, whether that be through different cooking methods or just eliminating certain food groups in their entirety. So if you haven't seen those videos, I would really recommend that you go back and watch them because I think there's a lot of good information there. They don't need to be watched in a certain order, so watching this one first is no problem. In this video, as we get into the end of a series that was focused a lot on discussing the downsides and what the dietitians and doctors don't tell you about fiber, I'm going to talk about what I think is the most compelling argument for why you should include fiber in your diet and why I actually think that the complete removal of fiber from your diet is not right for most people and you should instead opt for a low fiber diet. So the big argument for why you should actually have some fiber in your diet is going to be gut diversity. And what this refers to is having a diverse microbial environment in your gut of certain bacteria and a good balance between good and bad bacteria. Not that those terms really mean anything. Those are basically just arbitrary terms. They refer to certain bacteria that you don't want in super high quantities and those that you do to ensure balance in how they interact with your immune system and other functions of your body. So I think that the most important thing to talk about first is how your diet influences the gut diversity and how it can significantly be reduced on a low fiber diet. So there's actually a term for the loss of diversity or balance of your gut bacteria, and that is dysbiosis. So we're going to be talking about the main causes of dysbiosis. The worst things that you can do in your diet that cause dysbiosis are mostly going to deal with a processed foods diet. And I've been talking about the negatives of a processed foods diet in the first two videos extensively, but once again they come up in this context as well. The processed foods have a lot of things bad with them, but in this context, firstly, they're often very high in sugar. And sugar in high quantities can actually reduce the production of certain proteins that are needed for colonization and reproduction of gut bacteria. Second thing that they're often high in is salt. And salt in high quantities and in unregulated amounts in your body can actually be an antibiotic and have antibiotic effects to kill gut bacteria, once again reducing the reproduction of the good ones that you want there. These processed foods are also often devoid not only of nutrients, but of fiber, which is used to fuel your gut bacteria. And without any nutrients or any fuel for your gut bacteria, they're going to die and there's going to be more opportunity for bad bacteria or pathogens to take over. And finally, certain compounds that are in these processed foods, when they ferment in your gut, they can actually create toxic aldehydes. These toxic aldehydes can be like antibiotics. So another thing that you definitely want to avoid is taking antibiotics, as these can kill your gut bacteria as well. Finally, having alcohol is something that you don't want to do because in your gut actually works as like a disinfectant and can kill the gut bacteria there as well, or at least starve them essentially. And then it's important to understand why fiber is actually able to be the fuel for your gut bacteria and enhance diversity. So with fiber, just a recap, it goes completely undigested in your body. And what that means is that it is able to transfer to your gut and be fermented. Especially soluble fiber, because it moves slowly, is able to move into your gut and be fermented. And that fermentation process just means that your gut bacteria is feeding on it and using it as food and a sort of fuel. It is the only part of your body that is able to use as fuel because we were not adapted to be able to extract calories or nutrients or energy from fiber. Instead, our gut bacteria do all of the digesting of it and all of the consumption of it instead of us. Now, the nice thing is that there are actually other compounds or other nutrients that we're able to ingest that have a similar role. As I mentioned in a previous video, omega-3 fatty acids are actually able to feed the gut bacteria in a very similar way. They're also able to feed on excess amino acids. Maybe if you're on a very high protein diet, a lot of those are going to be able to be used for fermentation by these gut bacteria. However, I'm not totally convinced that for the majority of the population, you're going to be getting enough of these nutrients to replace fiber in its entirety. So maybe you're able to reduce fiber and have those fiber adjacent things along with it without completely eliminating fiber from your diet as a whole. So that's how you get or don't get gut diversity. But now let's talk about why it's actually important. So your gut microbes, what they actually do when they ferment fiber and when they are fed is that they produce things called short-chain fatty acids. Now, I know I talked about them in the first video about how they're important for hormone and hunger signaling, but can also work the opposite way to influence a false sense of satiety and prevent your absorption of nutrients from food. But they have another role in this context, and this really is where they become so important. So the short-chain fatty acids that are created through these bacteria, they're created either through the fermentation of fiber by these bacteria, or once again through the fermentation of amino acids and nitrogenous compounds, or they can even be ingested. There are 3 main short-chain fatty acids that are important for your body and you want to make sure that you're getting enough of. They're butyrate, propionate, and acetate. Butyrate is the big one because it's used as fuel for your colon cells. Your colon cells are different from the rest of your cells in your body as they do not get energy the same way, and so they get energy from butyrate. Propionate is huge because it influences gluconeogenesis and supports that process. Gluconeogenesis is how your body creates glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, like through protein, and the propionate is also good for anti-obesity effects as it signals satiety as well, and this is also important for preventing the accumulation of fat in the liver. Finally, acetate is important for its role in cholesterol synthesis, as cholesterol is important for so many different processes in your body and is able to ensure that those processes are running smoothly by synthesizing the cholesterol where it is needed. So you're definitely going to want those. They each have their own unique processes and are very important. You can, for example, get butyrate from food. You could actually get it from dairy products like butter or cheese. The other ones you can get, again, through the fermentation of amino acids. And the fermentation of amino acids can also create branched-chain fatty acids, which can have similar roles to short-chain fatty acids. And what happens when you aren't getting the fuel for your gut bacteria and they die is that you stop getting that production of short-chain fatty acids. And the biggest role of the gut bacteria and the short-chain fatty acids is actually influencing the gut-brain axis. And outside of that hormone signaling, the short-chain fatty acids are actually able to send signals to your brain to modulate inflammation. And what this means is it shuts down inflammatory processes that are leading to chronic inflammation. It can also prevent neuroinflammation, which can be detrimental to your neurological health. They can strengthen the blood-brain barrier, therefore preventing pathogens that are in the blood from infecting the brain and leading to neurodegenerative disorders. And finally, it is important for impacting your memory and boosting your mood. So there are a lot of roles there that are super important. Outside of short-chain fatty acids, just with your gut in general and the gut bacteria, they can send signals to create certain neurotransmitters such as GABA and serotonin. GABA is important for regulating anxiety and sleep, so mostly your mood, and serotonin is very similar. It maintains a stable mood, helps you with your sleep, your digestion, among many other things. And there are a number of different bacteria that are super important for influencing this axis. So I think that my research for this video really did change my opinion a little bit on fiber because it really is a compelling argument. All of these things are so beneficial for us, and some of these processes are arguably essential. And fiber is the main catalyst for it by being able to be fermented and eaten by your gut bacteria. However, I was curious as I was doing this research how people, our ancestors before we had modern fiber, were able to produce short-chain fatty acids, have strong gut diversity. And this was mainly through the fermentation of those proteins and nitrogenous compounds, but also just having a high bacterial load. Of course, their food had much more bacteria, especially when they weren't cooking, but also just eating lots of foods that were fermented. I think implementing fermented products is so important, as a lot of these bacteria, especially like lactobacillus, are so important for influencing the gut-brain barrier. So whether it's getting short-chain fatty acids via other means, or just increasing your microbial load to influence the diversity of your gut, it really is important to focus on these other ways if you aren't getting fiber. Maybe if you can tolerate fiber, switch to a low-fiber diet while also having these other compounds as well. And I think that your gut diversity is really going to be in a good place. So that's really all I have for this video. Again, this is the last informational video of this series. But it really has been interesting to do the research, and I hope that you guys, if you haven't seen those first 2 videos, will go check them out because they are pretty interesting. Please let me know what you think about this video, and if you have any interesting commentary, please write it down below because I love to hear it. So thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you not only in the final video of this series, but also in the next series we do as well.